Hi class, I just wanted to go over a few things for week 5 and also for the upcoming weeks, because these next few weeks are really going to kind of work together to help you get prepared for the week 7 research essay. So that's why I have that up here on the screen, because we're going to go through the different steps and what we've already been doing in the class to get you ready for this research essay, and then what we're going to be doing for weeks 5 and 6 to further help you prepare for week 7. So, and starting with the end in mind, you are writing a research essay during week 7. Okay, so the purpose of this is it's one of the important things in the class is being able to do research and combined with analyzing the text that we've written and to help you become a stronger academic writer and a researcher, and then really bringing in those critical thinking skills. Okay, so the basic instructions are you are going to make a claim. And when you hear the word claim, also think about the word argument. So you are saying something that you are going to prove. Okay, like I could claim today is a sunny day and I'm going to prove it to you. I see the sunshine, I see the birds singing, so there will be different things that I'm going to prove to you. Someone else could disagree with that. It's like, well, it's really partly sunny, or something else, or not where I live. So the idea is that you're making a claim that somebody could possibly disagree with you, but that you're going to provide evidence of why this claim is true. So the evidence is going to come from the text itself, which we call the primary text, and then it's also going to come from critical secondary sources. Okay, so that's what we're working on in week 5, is coming up with these initial parts that you need to make the claim and to develop a thesis and to develop some research questions. Okay, so thinking about where you're going to be heading with that in week 7, you're going to be writing this paper. It's 1,200 to 1,500 words, which is about 5 to 6 pages, if you think about that. Not including the works cited page. And then to be able to do that, you'll have the primary text itself, which you already have them in the course. And then you're going to go to the GMC library and look for 3 critical secondary sources. Okay, so these are the different things that you can do for the research paper. You can do a topic focusing in on a single text in the class. You can do a topic incorporating multiple texts by different authors if you want to do some comparing and contrasting, or you can incorporate multiple texts by the same author, looking for what are the connections you can make in the different works by the same author. Okay, so one of the things that you need to think about in being a critical thinker is that it takes time, and it takes time spent with that text. If you're going to choose to write about a story of an hour, you're going to read that multiple times if you haven't done so already, because every time you read that, you're going to see a phrase maybe that you missed before, and you just start to become more familiar with it. And all of our selections are pretty short, so it doesn't take a lot of time to go back through that. And sometimes the second time we read something, we find something different, or we start to change our opinion a little bit. Especially with Hills Are Like Elephants. The very first time I ever read that story, I'd immediately rewrite it and say, well, wait a minute, what did I just read? So that's what I like about the text that we have in this course. They're pretty short, so you have time to do that. Okay. So in week 5, then you're going to need to think about what has already been said about this article, about this text. And all of the text in our course, there's a lot of things that have been written about that. So that kind of helps you narrow down what you're going to say about it. Okay. Is what have some other people have said. So, and you could further agree with them and do, a little bit more of your own research and add that into your paper. Or maybe you've read one of the scholarly articles in the GMC library and completely disagreed with it. So that could be the focus of your topic. But you want to make sure that your thesis is arguable, and you have to require research to it. So you can't say the story of an hour is a really great story because of the surprise ending. It needs to have a little bit more meat to it. It needs to be something that's arguable, that in a scholarly conversation, if we were sitting, together and talking about it, and kind of as we've done in the discussion boards, there's different opinions, and then I have an opinion. So then you'd want to share, well, this is why I think this is what happened in the story. And then you'd point to exactly something from the text, or you can also point to evidence from the scholarly articles. Okay. So you're going to be using the databases in the GMC library, and there's lots of resources in there. And we use those because those are automatically vetted for their authenticity. You don't have to Google anything and wonder if it is, a good article. Everything in there has been vetted to at least be in the database. Now, some articles are better than others, of course, but you know that you're using scholarly articles when you use them from that. Okay. And one thing to keep in mind, too, when you're thinking about the week 7 research essay is you can assume that we've already read it. You can assume that as readers of your essay, we have read the story and we know the stories. So you don't have to spend a lot of time on the plot summary or biographical information. A lot of times students want to do that because it feels like a comfort zone to fall into when you're writing. So sometimes, when you're doing your pre-writing and getting ready to do this, you may want to have some of those notes on there because, they could be important to the process that you're using. But your final essay, you want to avoid extensive plot summaries or a lot of biographical information. A couple other things to think about in your introduction. You're going to have your thesis, and that's what we're working on in week 5. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And each paragraph is going to have a topic sentence that goes back to that thesis. So if you say the story of an hour is a good story, is whatever type of story you're going to say, because of A, B, and C, then you're going to have a paragraph that's going to be about A. Then you're going to have a paragraph that's going to be about B. And then you're going to have a paragraph that's going to be about C. So that's really going to help you organize the rest of the essay. Okay? And then, of course, you have to proofread your paper and make sure that the grammar and punctuation are all ready to go. So this is not an essay that you can write on Sunday evening during week 7. It takes time, and that's why we've started working on this really even before week 5. Because if you think about the response essays that you've done, you did one where it was just working with the primary text and really looking at the evidence in there. And then you had week 3 where we look at the resources and what they are saying about some of the stories. And then in week 4, you dug a little bit deeper into the texts and then looking at the literary devices. And some of you chose to write about literary theories and start playing around with those types of things and looking at the text in a critical way. All right, so I just wanted to go over these guidelines first. And then in week 5, you also have some different things to think about as you're getting ready. Okay, so this is an argumentative essay. You are arguing for your claim. It doesn't have to, it's not a controversial thing necessarily, but you're arguing something that, if you're sitting and talking with someone about the story, they may not agree with you. But, it isn't meant to be controversial. It's meant to be like, this is what I got from the story, and this is how. And then you would provide that evidence. Okay, so there's a couple examples here. And this is what you're going to be doing for week 5. What is your topic? Which texts are you going to be using? If you're going to be using a literary theory, you talk about which literary theory to use. And then what is the research question? So what are you going to use to go through and find out those questions? Now here in week 5, you're going to propose this and submit it as an assignment. But as you work the next couple weeks, it may kind of shift a little bit, and that's okay. That's what happens a lot when you're doing research. You may have started out in one way, but as you start reading and start finding out things, your mind starts to shift, and some of the ideas that you held before aren't exactly the same. So that could be shifted. Okay, so for this thesis, Star Wars is the most important film in the 20th century. There is something that I would add to that to help you have a really good thesis and to really help you organize your rest of your paper. It's the most important film of the 20th century because, and then you can list your reasons why. Because of George Lucas was the director, because of the cleverness of R2-D2, and that Han Solo played a big role in that. So any of those types of things. I'm just trying to give you ideas. So then you would have a paragraph about Han Solo. You would have a paragraph about George Lucas, just to give you an idea. And then here's some things to think about as you're developing your thesis. And then there is a resource here. Let me see if I can pull it up. That talks about writing for, and then I don't know if you're going to be able to see that, so hold on just a second. It talks about writing for literature, which is a little bit different than you probably had in English 101 where you were writing about general topics. So I really like this website because it really gives you examples of how you're going to write about literature. So go ahead and look through that. That link is in the classroom as well. So for week 5, for the skill building activity, these are the things that you're going to be doing, and you're going to be turning it in. So look back at some of the things that we've already talked about. So remember I said we've been practicing little parts of the research paper by critically looking at the text, and then by also finding what scholars have written about the text, and then going back and even further digging into the text and looking at the literary devices and starting to apply literary theories. So we've already done some of that practice. So you're going to start putting this all together. So here are the different things that you're going to use. Here again are the different choices for the text. Whether you're going to do a single text or multiple text, that's up to you. And then you're going to answer these different questions. The topic and literary theory that you're going to be writing about. And I just want to say a word about literary theories. Sometimes students get a little bit confused about that. The word theory should be a clue to you that it's just something that people think that is true, but it hasn't necessarily been proven, but they're generally held to be true. But the idea behind literary theories is that we're looking at a text with a different kind of lens. Okay, so a lot of times students want to pick the feminist literary theory because it's pretty popular and pretty well known. You've probably heard about it even before taking a literature class. But so you're looking at a text through the feminist lens, but that does not mean that the author intended it that way. That does not mean that the author was a feminist or anything to do with why or how that was written. They could have written it as a feminist work, but the lens is looking at those gender relationships and really honing in on those and noticing the differences. That's what the theory is, because then it's just really a theory because we don't know what the author intended unless there is something that the author has come out and said, I wrote the story because of this. But that's any of those literary theories, or even looking at like the historical theory. So what was happening during that time. That's our lens as readers and as critical thinkers that we're applying that, but not necessarily true that the authors meant that. So I just wanted to let you know that. And then so you need to have a research question that's going to drive your research. How are you going to look for it? Okay, so back to the example of Star Wars, you would have to have a question that is going to drive you to find what you're looking for. If you're proving that this was the best movie of the 20th century because of those 3 things that I mentioned, then you're going to have to start looking at those areas of your research. So you need to have a question that drives that. Then your working thesis statement, that is announcing what your hypothesis is and the purpose of your eventual